Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Giridhara Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Giridhara Hari Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Yamuna Shira Vanasari Yamuna Shira Vanasari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Hari Jaya Gopi Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Yamuna Shira Vanasari Yamuna Shira Vanasari Govinda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Jaya Dam Vishupad Paramahamsa Pri Rajagachaja Stotra Satya Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Tilaboy Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Skandiviti Founder Sharia's Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada Ki Namasarya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Samavata Bhaktivedanta Ki Transcendental Distribution Ki Jai Sri Gauritai Ki, Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki, Jai Sri Krishna Balarama Ki, Jai Sri Giri Govardhana Ki, Jai Sri Sri Radha Madhava Ki, Jai Nitai Gauda Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Takshudamritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Jata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalitam Shri Sakanditam Sya Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radha Kantan Yastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranami Hari Priye Vansakalpa Tribhyasya Kripa Sindhu Devasya Vitanam Pavanidyo Vaishravyo Namo Naha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudinaya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the Supreme Ocean being, unto Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesa Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhavati Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttama Shloka Charitam चकार भगवान ऋषि निःश्रेयसाय लोकस्य रम्यं स्वशयनं महः. The Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sridham Namaha. Om Sridham Namaha. Om Sridham Namaha. Mukam karoti vacharam pangum langayate girim yatkripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataram. Yatkripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataram. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. We continue from second canto, chapter 5, chapter 5, the cause of all causes. And today is text number 4. Yes. Yad Vijnano Yad Adharo Yat Ras Tvam Yad Atmakaha Ekaha Srijasi Bhutani Bhutair Evatma Mayaya Yad Vijnano Yadadaro Yat Paras Tvam Yad Atmakaha Eka Srijasi Bhutani Bhutaya Devatma Mayaya Yad Vijnano Yadadaro Yat Parastvam Yad Atmakaha Eka Srijasi Bhutani Bhutaya Devatma Mayaya Yad Vijnano Yadadharo Yat Parastvam Yadatmakaha Eka Srijasi Bhutani Bhutair Evatma Mayaya Yad Vijnano Yadadharo Yat Parastvam Yadatmakaha Eka Srijasi Bhutani Bhutair Evatma Mayaya Yad Vijnano Yadadharo Yat Parastvam Yadatmakaha Ekaha Srijasi Bhutani Bhutairi Vatmamayaya Yat Vijnanaha, the source of knowledge, Yat Adaraha, under whose protection, Yat Paraha, under whose subordination, Tvam, you, Yat Atmakaha, in what capacity, Ekaha, alone, Trijasi, you are creating Bhutani, the living entities, Bhutai, with the help of the material elements. Eva, certainly, Atma, self, Maya, by potency. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. My dear Father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? Kindly repeat after me. My dear Father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? Purport. It was known by Sri Narada Muni that Lord Brahma attained creative energy by undergoing severe austerities. As such, he could understand that there was someone, someone else superior to Brahmaji who invested Brahma with the power of creation. And therefore, he asked all the above questions. Discoveries of progressive scientific achievements are therefore not independent. The scientist has to attain the knowledge of a thing already existing by means of the wonderful brain made by someone else. A scientist can work with the help of such an awarded brain, but it is not possible for the scientist to create his own or a similar brain. Therefore, no one is independent in the matter of any creation, nor is such creation automatic. Yeah. Translation again. My dear Father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all living entities with material elements by your personal energy? So the continuing questions here by Narada Muni. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the position of scientists. Very often scientists become very proud of some particular discovery. However, any such type of wonderful discovery that scientists may make is not independent. This is the point being made here. The scientists' discoveries of progressive scientific achievements are therefore not independent. Because scientists have not created their own brain, nor have they created the material energy or the material elements that make up this material world. So actually, the purpose of life, or the success, we can say the success in one's life, is to understand the source of what we are experiencing, the source of who we are, the source of this material world. And as implied directly here in the purport, or in the chapter rather, the cause of all causes. What is the original cause? So I think it was in South America, Srila Prabhupada was invited to some maybe university for speaking. And then there was a question and answer. And one professor was asking, that is very nice, Krishna. You say that Krishna has created so many things, but who has created Krishna? And then, of course, Prabhupada explained, uh, someone who has no superior to him, or someone who has not been created, only that person can be called Krishna. Of course, he quoted from various shastra. That is also Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadi Radir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna is that very unique personality. No one else can make that claim, that he is the origin and the cause of all causes. And this can only be understood when one takes the time to read such literatures as Srimad Bhagavatam. And as mentioned in some previous verses, this was especially demonstrated in some of the wonderful prayers that were composed by Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami is being asked by Parikshit Maharaj different questions, and before answering, he composed these different prayers. And in some of those purports, Prabhupada was mentioning how unless one develops this kind of a mood or mentality displayed by Shukadeva Goswami, that of being very humble, understanding one's position of dependency, then one cannot speak about the subject matter, or not. One cannot understand the subject matter at hand. So, to answer the questions, to answer some of the questions uh, raised by Parikshit Maharaj, this chapter, this section of the Bhagavatam is narrating this exchange of questions between Narada Muni and the first created living entity. That means Lord Brahma. So the more one actually develops the proper consciousness of a devotee, the more one understands, the more one is conscious of his total dependence, isn't it, on something beyond himself. We are, Bhagavad Gita explains how the living entity in his conditional state, Baddha Jeev, when one is not having any knowledge of his real identity, he is fully, completely controlled by the modes of material nature. That question was asked by Arjuna actually to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. How is it that we seem to be forced to act, isn't it, in ways that we don't want to? So Krishna explains that when one is under these modes of material nature, then he is acting according to these modes of material nature. And it is only when one cultivates this transcendental knowledge that one can become freed from this position of being forced to act in so many different ways. So this is a very fundamental point that that we are. That's also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. It is not only that Prakriti is dependent on the superior authority of Purusha. Krishna is Purusha, and Purusha creates, Krishna creates, and material energy is created. So there is the creator, and then there is the creation. Similarly, that is referred to as apara prakriti. Material nature is apara prakriti. Living entity, jiva, also described as prakriti, para prakriti, because we are also created. Although we are a living entity, jiva is different from prakriti in that the jiva is spiritual, whereas matter is material, but both are prakriti. One being para prakriti, and the other being apara prakriti. So therefore, the path of self-realization leads one to understand one's position as prakriti in the sense of being dependent, fully dependent. This is the main, we can say, disease of the conditioned soul, thinking oneself independent. And therefore, Ekale Ishvara Krishna are sabritya. Only Krishna, in the absolute sense, that's why we add the name Dasa. We are Dasa, servant, or Dasi. In the higher sense, all the living entities are Dasi. We chant that actually every day in the Tulsi prayers. That please help me to become like the servants of Vrindavan, like the damsels of Vrindavan. Your humble servant. So Narada Muni, of course, is therefore, Prabhupada explains here that that it was known to Sri Narada Muni that Lord Brahma attained creative energy by undergoing severe austerities. That's another important point, of course. That creative energy means power. Power, energy. In order to perform any activity or any service, one needs to have some energy or power. And the point being made here is that actually such ability, as demonstrated by Lord Brahma, is attained by austerity or tapasya. Therefore, tapasya is not a very popular word in modern day society. People don't like the word tapasya or austerity, but in the Vedic culture, it is a very important concept that tapasya brahmacharyena samena cha damena cha. Tapasya means to actually voluntarily learn to control the mind and the senses. And by such tapasya, then one can gain the favor of the Lord. One can become, just like in the case of Lord Brahma, the Lord reciprocated by empowering Lord Brahma to actually create the material world. Yeah. So this is being discussed here. We can go to the next. We have a little bit of time. To the following verse, which is text 5. Atman bhavayase tani na para bhavayan swayam. Atma shaktim avastadbhya urnanabhir ivakramaha. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. As the spider very easily creates the network of its own cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Report. The best example of self-sufficiency is the sun. Interesting. Self-sufficiency. The sun does not require to be illuminated by any other body. Rather, it is the sun which helps all other illuminating agents. For in the presence of the sun, no other illuminating agent becomes prominent. Narada compared the position of Brahma to the self-sufficiency of the spider, who creates its own field of activities without any other's help by employment of its own energetic creation of saliva. Yeah. The wonders of nature. That is, although the spider, as we know, is very expert, and if left alone, if left to himself, he'll cover the whole room with his web, spider web, and as he's very expert, isn't it? If you've analyzed, I'm sure, it's like circle, all very like a masterpiece, you know. And after finishing his web, any creature that comes in there, I mean, insect, usually insect flying, gets caught in the web and cannot get out. But the spider, he runs around all over the place. He never gets caught up in the web. So this nice example is given, or Narada Muni is giving this example, that Lord Brahma has been, of course, the spider has saliva. He didn't himself. He was created that way, and that's his field of expertise, so to speak. In a similar way, the Lord Brahma, his particular field of expertise is to create the material or to assemble material elements, material energy. Text number 6. Naham Veda Param Yasmin Na Param Na Samam Vibho Namarupa Gunair Bhavyam Sarasat Kinchit Anyataha. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created by any source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. Report. The manifested world is full of varieties of created beings in 8,400,000 species of life. and some of them are superior and inferior to others. In human society, the human being is considered to be the superior living being. And amongst the human beings, there are also different varieties, good, bad, equal, etc. But Narada Muni took for granted that none of them has any source of generation besides his father, Brahmaji. Therefore, he wanted to know all about them from Lord Brahma. Text 7. Sabhavan acharat ghoram yat tapa susamahitah tena kedayase nastvam parashankam chayasyasi. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities in perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Report. Following in the footsteps of Sri Narada Muni, one should not blindly accept the spiritual master as God himself. Spiritual master is duly respected on a par with God, but the spiritual master claiming to be God himself should at once be rejected. Narada Muni accepted Brahma as the supreme due to Lord Brahma's wonderful acts in creation. But doubts arose in him when he saw that Lord Brahma also worshipped some superior authority. The supreme is supreme, and he has no worshipable superior. The ahangraho pasita, or the one who worships himself with the idea of becoming God himself, is misleading. But the intelligent disciple can at once detect that the Supreme God does not need to worship anyone, including himself, in order to become God. Ahangrahopasana may be one of the processes for transcendental realization, but the ahangrahopasita can never be God himself. No one becomes God by undergoing a process of transcendental realization. Narada Muni thought of Brahmaji as a supreme person, but when he saw Brahmaji engaged in the process of transcendental realization, doubts arose in him. So he wanted to be clearly informed. Of course, in the Krishna book, we read Krishna meditating in the morning. You've read? Yeah. So, yeah, this is we can read the last one because then Lord Brahma will begin to answer the questions and clear the doubts being raised here by Narada Muni. So the last question being asked by Narada Muni is in text number 8. Etam me prishtata sarvam sarvagna sakaleshvara vijanihi yathai vedam aham buddhye nushashitaha. My dear Father, you know everything and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student. Short purport. The inquiries made by Narada Muni are very important for everyone concerned. And as such, Narada requested Brahmaji to deem them suitable so that all others who may come in the line of disciplic succession of the Brahma Sampradaya may also know them properly without any difficulty. Yes. So the answers to these questions will be given beginning in the next verses by Lord Brahma himself. Any comments on this? Fourth, yeah.
To Krishna that although I don't want to, but still we are forced back according to wants.
Yes.
So who is that who don't want? Just like I don't want to do this act, and someone is forcing me to give. But as soon as we are in the modes of material nature, there is we have to act according to what's but that person who is not wanting to, who is that person?
Who is that person who is not wanting to act? The person who begins to develop transcendental knowledge. those who are not uh, developing transcendental knowledge, they may sometimes not like to do what they're doing, but they're forced to do it, and they have no means of not doing it. They have no ability to not follow these modes of material nature. They're forced. The modes of material nature are so powerful, so strong, that even against one's will, one acts according to these modes of material nature. And therefore it means that all conditioned living entities are engaged in sinful activities because they are acting in ignorance. That's why Prabhupada explains every morsel of food that we eat, if we're not devotees, is a sinful activity. So we can just imagine how much we are accumulating sinful activities. Uh, so the beginning of awakening is when we when we start asking ourselves, how can I stop such activities um, that uh, that seem to be completely forced upon me, and so that is the beginning of uh, we can say enlightenment, such kind of question or inquisitiveness, and one can only become successful in stopping those activities by the cultivation of transcendental knowledge, by becoming when one becomes firmly situated in the mode of goodness, for example, then obviously he is no longer under the influence of the mode of passion or ignorance. Although even the mode of goodness, as explained in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, is not an absolutely secure position because one of the verses in the 14th chapter explains that sometimes the mode of passion overcomes the mode of goodness. Sometimes the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance overcome the mode of goodness. So, but so therefore, the whole Vedic process is to gradually assist the conditioned souls to rise to the mode of goodness that needs to be less and less under the influence of the two lower modes of nature, passion and ignorance. But only when one attains or rises above that mode of goodness to reach pure goodness, which is devotional service, is one no longer in any way influenced by these modes of material nature. So, of all the positions in the material world, the mode of one who is coming to the mode of goodness and becoming firmly established in the mode of goodness, then that's also nice to explain. Mode of goodness helps one to understand things more clearly. And mode of goodness also helps to eliminate sinful activities or the reactions to sinful activities. That, yeah. So that means that the position of the majority of people in the material world is very difficult because people are without knowledge, and therefore they are unknowingly also. It's like an animal who has no ability to understand because his consciousness is very low consciousness, and within the body of an animal, one cannot develop a higher consciousness. And when we are not cultivating this knowledge, we are in a similar position to animals, in that we are acting, we could say, by instinct. Animal acts by instinct. What is the difference between animal and man? That's explained actually in philosophy, that man is also an animal, but the difference being that he has the ability to reason. L'homme est un animal raisonnable, or man is an animal that has the ability to reason, and therefore to cultivate knowledge. Yeah, so here it mentions, for example, how yeah, that the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, helps one to acquire knowledge, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. That's also explained here. Those situated in that mode, this is text number 6, 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge, but they become conditioned by the concept of happiness. So it is not fully, yeah. So text 6 is nicely explaining, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge, but they become conditioned by the concept of happiness. So therefore, our problem in the material world are these modes of material nature, isn't it? And that is why, unless we hear on a regular basis and cultivate transcendental knowledge, we remain totally under the control or the influence of these modes of material nature. And the Nectar Devotion nicely explains how the this is the wonderful effect of bhakti or devotional service when one fully becomes absorbed in activities of bhakti or devotional service, then he gradually transcends these modes of material nature. And the perfectional stage, of course, is that one totally, the pure devotee is totally situated above these three modes of material nature. Yeah.
Someone who is trying to know the transcendental knowledge, but still his consciousness is not fully purified.
Yes.
So, can he make this excuse that, oh Krishna, what can I do? I'm still
Condition.
Yeah, being carried away by the modes of material nature, so I have to act according. So although he don't want, but still, don't want, but still, there's this condition.
Well, one should pray to the Lord, acknowledging his condition of being still under the modes of material nature, and understand that it's not my natural position to be under these modes of material nature, and therefore I'm acting against my original nature, spiritual nature, and one should be expressing feelings of one should be, what is it? One should repent. One should ask forgiveness to the Lord for not for not being situated in our original position, and one should pray to Krishna to help us come to our original position. The conclusion is not that, oh, my dear Krishna, I'm still a conditioned soul, don't mind, you know. I have, as you explain in the Bhagavad Gita, I have to act according to my nature. But that's not my real nature. According to these modes of nature, we are acting, but that is, these modes of material nature are not our original nature. So we should pray to Krishna, kindly help me to become relieved, from these modes of material nature, and not simply accept the position that, okay, well, because I'm still conditioned, so therefore one cannot or should not justify one's sinful activities on the plea that I'm still under the modes of material nature. Being under the modes of material nature is not our natural position, and it is not pleasing to Krishna, because Krishna becomes pleased, and he reciprocates with his devotees when he sees that they are making that endeavor to return to their original position, and he helps in different ways like that. Yeah. So we should not be we should not be complacent or simply, well, what to do? I'm fallen, and I'll, we should understand that we are fallen, and make the necessary efforts to come out of our fallen condition. Yeah.
Verse 5. Spider is given.
Spider.
So you were telling that when in the cobweb of spider,
Yes.
some insect comes and stuck up.
Yes.
And but spider is roaming around, but it is not.
Yes.
So how can we compare spider and ordinary insect with comparison?
How to compare the spider to ordinary insect?
The spider and ordinary insect with some living entity and Brahmaji. Brahmaji can hovering around, but
No,
insect.
no, the example is given to demonstrate how, in the same way that the spider has that particular gift of nature to create a web, isn't it? Spider web, and he he knows his web, uh, and because he's created it, because he has that ability. So that comparison is given uh, to 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 uh, to demonstrate that in a similar way, like Brahma has his own creative energy, and he knows the whole creation, and therefore he in 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 that sense, that comparison is being given. Someone who doesn't have that creative energy, like ordinary, let's say insects, then they will get caught up in that web. Um, so the comparison is simply to show that uh, Lord Brahma is having that ability, that knowledge has been given to him, that creative power uh, is there, similar to a spider who has, on a much smaller scale, of course, to create the whole cosmic manifestation. I mean, Brahma creates a web, the spider, right, as one of so many uh, uh, species of life. So it's simply uh, to demonstrate that that Lord Brahma, uh, he has been empowered in that way to create the material. Example also is given of the sun. Prabhupada gives how the sun is a very good example of self-sufficiency. All the different gadgets that we have here, for example, at some point we have to plug it so that they get recharged. The sun doesn't have to be recharged. He is by nature always effulgent, has been since time immemorial. Yeah, like that. Okay, and close for now. Jai Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Sri Prabhupada ki.